Hi, this is Brian Carpenter from One Worcester Homes. We're excited to offer the strongest buyer and seller representation throughout Worcester County and all the surrounding areas. Our agents are trained better and will look out for your best interests throughout the entire transaction. To reach out to One Worcester Homes, simply find us on Facebook, type in One Worcester Homes. We look forward to the opportunity to help you and your family in your home buying or selling transaction. And don't forget to join us the fourth Saturday of every month at 7:30 on Handling Change.
The following is a paid program. The opinions are those of the host and guests and not necessarily those of the station or its management.
You're about to undertake a 2-hour experience of eye-opening, mind-expanding, revealing common sense discussion for the common sense citizen. Strap yourself in, put your trays in the upright position, remove dentures and loose jewelry, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and come along for the ride. It is time for the Joe Mangiacotti Show on Powerhouse Station WCRN 830 and our affiliates and streaming on the TuneIn app. It's Joe time, baby.
All right, folks. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the Sunday edition of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here on AM 830 WCRN affiliates. Don't forget we're live streaming on the TuneIn app. You can also tell Alexa to play WCRN. She'll do that with no questions asked. We're also streaming live on our Facebook page, at Joe Mangi Show. That's the social media handle for everything. Joe Mangi, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. Twitter, Facebook's, Instagram, and even Parler and Rumble. Yep, all of them are out there, so check it all out. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. That's 508-871-7000. The lines are open and available as I broadcast from our palatial but not overly ostentatious studios here in Westborough, Massachusetts. You can also text us on our text line. It's running 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388, or email me at textjoeontheradio@gmail.com. It appears all in the same place. Good morning, Cam.
Good morning.
How are you, sir?
Not too bad. How about you?
I'm good. How was your fight last night?
It was pretty good.
Your guy didn't win, huh?
No, the main event. I mean, it was a good set of fights, but
Yeah. Now, that's mixed martial arts. Do you like the no holds bar, or do you like the boxing or the kicking part of it? But like, what's the attraction over regular boxing?
I just like how anything I
I just like the violence.
Yeah, but it's a lot quicker because it's more. It is more.
Oh,
violent.
faster pace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't go as long as a boxing match, and anything can happen at any time.
Who's the guy right now? Like, who's the champ? Who's the celebrity kickboxer guy?
At least Conor
MMA.
McGregor's.
I'm sorry, right?
Yeah,
MMA.
yeah.
Okay,
Conor McGregor's still the biggest draw for MMA. So I mean, anybody he's fighting is a big deal, and yeah, there's just a bunch of crazy fighters out there.
Isn't he a spokesperson for Scotch or something now?
Yeah, he has his own whiskey.
Oh, it's
company.
his own. Okay,
Yep.
All right. Well, good for him. Good for him. When a sports person can flip their celeb into other money, other cash streams, it's always a good American way. Did you see Brady's rookie card went for $1.3 million? And he tweeted out after that, wow, okay, I'm going to clear out the basement. He's probably got a stack. He's sitting on $30,000 probably in his basement, right?
Exactly.
All right, crazy. All right, folks, good show ahead of us today. And actually, hour two, we are going to be joined by Allie Boyd, and we're going to talk about the Dr. Seuss books and the cancel culture and how that's going. And we'll even talk about the pictures that are the violation. And the Conscious Kid, this is the organization behind all this. It started with Joe Biden canceling these books to be read on Read Across America program. It's a literacy program in the country, and all presidents have done this. And he canceled these because of Conscious Kid. But we'll also look at we always like to follow the money, folks, right? You follow the money. And Conscious Kid is financially connected to BLM, and they end up making a lot of money selling books to school systems, anti-racial books and so forth. So there was some financial motivation behind doing this. It's not an altruistic type of move here. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. You know, I always like to point out when I come across a story about voter fraud, because, of course, we're told that it doesn't exist and it's not widespread and it's not a big deal. And I think because of that, we need to make sure that we look at it whenever it happens. So let's go to Texas, where a county justice of the peace was among 4 people who were arrested this past month. Altogether, 150 counts of voter fraud from the 2018 primary election in Medina County. So the Texas AG down there, the election fraud unit, back just a few weeks ago on February 11th, he arrested Justice of the Peace Thomas Ramez, detaining Leon Rivas Garez, Eva Martinez, and Mary Belderrama on allegations of election fraud. Now, folks, we've got to credit Project Veritas for a lot of this, right? They're always there. They're constantly doing undercover work, putting their reporters and producers and staff at risk. But because of Project Veritas, we have found things out that we never would have found it out. So I always have to do a tip of the hat to Project Veritas because they get stuff done. Right? The work that they've done undercover in abortion clinics, where they've uncovered the actual meetings and the conversations about selling body parts, right? It always gets swept away, but it's out there. They do great work. So just want to make sure you realize that Project Veritas is kind of behind this bust. So the case involves claims of harvesting ballots and votes at assisted living centers in the county, in Medina County. Now, according to the statement from the AG, Ken Paxton's office, we've heard his name, right? He's come up a few times, especially in the election situation in 2020. Ramez faces 1 count of organized election fraud. Now, the point that I'm pointing out here is when we're told election fraud doesn't exist, and we said it's not widespread and it's just, okay, somebody extra voting or whatever. Now, there are bands, there are groups like this. This is organized election fraud. So it's requiring a systematic system of harvesting ballots and casting phony ballots. Ramez is also 1 count of assisting voter voting ballot by mail. Right, we're back to the mail-in situation. 17 counts of unlawful possession of a ballot or ballot envelope. I mentioned when we were on with Senator Moore yesterday about these boxes that we put out there, drop-off boxes, unmonitored. But some projects like Veritas and other people decided to put cameras on these, and we saw people pulling up late at night or in the middle of the night with bags and boxes of ballots stuffing these boxes. And it's illegal, unless you're an official, to have more than 1 ballot on your possession. You're not supposed to walk around with 200 ballots. There's no reason for it. Where did you get them? You've harvested them somewhere, or you created them. So there's that count. Belderrama is charged with 1 count of organized election fraud, but 9 counts of illegal voting, 2 counts of unlawful possession of ballot or ballot envelope, and 1 count of mail ballot application. 2 counts of unlawfully assisting voter voting by mail. That back to those mail-out ballots, folks. And 2 counts of tampering with the government record. And 8 counts of election fraud. Garcia faces a single count of organized election fraud, 2 counts of illegal voting, 8 counts of unlawful possession of a ballot or envelope, 2 counts of election fraud, and 4 counts of fraudulent use of an absentee ballot by mail. So I got him for 4 of those. And Martinez is charged with a single count, again, of the organized, 9 counts of illegal voting, 28 counts of unlawful possession of a ballot or the envelope, 3 counts of purportedly acting as an agent, so they used a little scam, 5 counts of tampering with government records, and 14 counts of election fraud, and 4 counts of fraudulent mail-in ballot applications. That's a lot of stuff going on, folks. The Texas Attorney General's office didn't immediately respond to some requests, but it's been released in statements. In a separate incident, Raquel Rodriguez, she's a Texas woman who bragged about being able to deliver thousands of votes for tens of thousands in cash. Let me say that again. Raquel Rodriguez, a woman from Texas, was bragging about being able to deliver thousands of votes. One person. Thousands of votes for $10,000 in cash. She was arrested in January on charges including election fraud and illegal voting. She was filmed during the undercover project, again by Veritas, that the nonprofit investigative journalist organization. They do great work. She was recorded in footage. It was released last year, bragging about those at least 5,000 votes. That was her minimum she said she could deliver. So, on this footage, Paxton opened an investigation, and it led to all these arrests. So there you have it. I mean, there is voter fraud, folks. It's out there. It exists. It's not a figment of one's imagination. It's not a far, vast right-wing conspiracy to throw you off and pretend that it isn't happening. It's there. It's absolutely there. All right. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. All right. So 104 arrested in the Texas. We talked about that. Something? Joe Biden, throughout his presidential campaign and continuing since he took the White House, he's promised this transparent approach, right, to the press and public relations. But he's really shifted one basement for a metaphorically other basement. The Oval Office is what he's done. I mean, we saw him on the video the other day for that meeting, and Nancy Pelosi there. But at the end of it, he actually turns to Nancy and asks her what she wants to do, if he has permission to take questions. But the way they ended, they just simply pull the plug and go to the White House, thank you for joining us. No crosstalk, nothing, not even gracefully get out of it and say, no, Mr. President, I think we're good or anything. In other words, I think he surprised them by offering to take questions. Jen Psaki continues to promise us that we're going to have a press conference soon. And we're at, 46 days? Today is 46 days in the White House? I mean, his predecessors have all had press conferences long before this point. In recent weeks, the administration's closed off several key avenues which the press and public have gained access. So the transparency, the accessibility, even the accountability from the White House isn't there. We're not seeing this. I mentioned the other day about shutting down the phone, the message line. He shut down the petition, right? Obama started that. Now you just direct it to the White House page, the White House page and comments, right? They don't want to hear from you that much. They don't want that much information coming into them. Now, the White House said, while it will divulge records of individuals who physically visit the White House, it will not be sharing their virtual visitor log. It's been, look, one of the Biden staff members said it. COVID-19 is the best thing that could have happened to Joe Biden. It gave him the cover he needed. It gave him a reason, because of the health concerns, to stay in the basement. No one was going to blame a guy pushing 80 for not wanting to go out, especially in the early days, folks, where so much was not known about this virus. And remember, there was confusion, and the Chinese lied to us originally about how it could be conveyed, airborne, through personal touch, etc. So we didn't know. It gave them plenty of cover and excuses. But that's not what the situation is anymore. A non-named White House official said that the administration's refusal to release virtual meeting logs was in line with the same way that previous administrations didn't release phone logs. Jen Psaki dismissed the reporter's query into the administration's lack of transparency on the issue, kind of rudely. I mean, I got to tell you, McKaylee McEnany is back on TV, right? She went on with Fox as a contributor now. And as much as I love Sarah Sanders, and she's my hero, McKaylee did an awesome job as press secretary. And so she's back on the scene, and we'll see her a few times a week on Fox. And she has a great way of giving her opinion and putting things in perspective. So I know a lot of you aren't happy with Fox these days, and there's been a migration to Newsmax and other sources, and that's fine. But I think it's always worth checking McKaylee out when you can. I got to tell you, it's absolutely worth it. So, Vice President Pence has been breaking his silence, folks, and he's shedding some light on the serious concerns about the 2020 election. Thought we'd touch on this because he's expressing the concerns, and this was during, according to Town Hall did this report. Pence noted that election irregularities, I'm always stumbling on that word, election irregularities during the election and the numerous instances of officials setting aside state election law. I mean, I brought that up yesterday too, but it gets pushed aside. Right, what do we hear? Nobody withstanding brought it forward. I think Clarence Thomas had some guts to write the dissension agreement that he did, kind of admonishing the other justices for not taking up that responsibility. But the thing here, folks, is that we have to keep this in the public mind's eye here. We have to continue to push this. We can't allow the elections like the legislature in Massachusetts tried to do here, quietly extending the mass mail-in voting and so forth. And despite when you're told that you have to call and request it, we know for a fact that's not the case. The ballots are being mailed out. I got a half a dozen texts yesterday and a few calls in the air talking about ballots being received with no request, ballots in the name of people who lived in that home previously. And that just is a simple example or evidence that the voter logs or voter rolls are not being purged. And when you say this, you gotta purge the voter logs, you're accused of suppressing votes. And of course, being racist, you're always accused of that too. But for saying, geez, the paperwork should be in order. How is that suppressing voter rights? The voter roll should be purged at every election. Purging does not mean removing a legitimate voter. It means crossing, and this is what the clerk's job should be doing. If the person is deceased, they should be removed. If the person no longer lives at that address, they should be removed. It's not a hard principle to get, folks. So when ballots are mailed out without a request, the question has to be asked, why, if they haven't been requested? Why are we flooding mailboxes and lobbies of condo buildings and apartment buildings and sending unwanted mail to homes where this person doesn't live? Pence said that's why, when I was serving as presiding officer at the joint session of Congress certifying the Electoral College results, I pledged to ensure that all objections properly raised under the Electoral Count Act would be given full hearing before Congress and the American people. But he noted that it was very troubling with the irregularities. See, there were states where governors and secretaries of state in the courts made changes to state election laws. I was told yesterday, well, the courts did it, so that's all okay. But is it? Because it's pretty clear that the responsibility of voting in elections and how they take place in a state is up to the state legislature. Pence went on to say, hey, well, legislators in many states have begun work on election reform to restore public confidence in state elections. Unfortunately, congressional Democrats have chosen to sweep those valid concerns and reforms aside and to push forward a brazen attempt to nationalize elections in blatant disregard of the U.S. Constitution, hence H.R. 1, which includes eliminating voter ID laws that already exist for those, applaud please, common sense states that say, hey, I got a little pushback yesterday and then about the voter ID stuff. I do not understand. And many of the, Candace Owens and Lawrence Jones, some of these prominent conservative black media types are saying, as black people, they're very insulted to assume that blacks in America can't figure out how to get an ID, that it's beyond their ability, that we're asking too much for them to do what we expect others to do. And I say, kudos to them. Good point. Good point. H.R. 1 would force states to adopt universal mail-in ballots. Force them to. Immediately removing state legislature control and federalizing it in violation of the U.S. Constitution, which it seems the left only likes to point out or use that parchment of paper when it works for them, not to be a true guiding rod here. It would force them for the early voting. Now, early voting isn't such a big, I think that you should have early voting a week or two. I mean, leading up to Election Day, you should have the option of going in a few days. I'm talking days, not months, never mind weeks, months. I think you serve yourself short. Look at the 2020 election. The polls that were taken after the election from Democrats and others who had no idea of the Hunter Biden stories before the election because the media and the big tech companies, right, shut that down. What they did to the New York Post was disgusting. They controlled the narrative, and they didn't have all the information. And not that they let the Hunter Biden part of that story out before the election, but the point is that there is information that becomes available, and it could happen after you. I mean, there were people who voted earlier and were joking about, and that was actually, this isn't even a joke. Can I change my vote? Reached one of the top search questions on Google weeks before the election. How do I change my vote? Can I change my vote? So I don't think that voting months before Election Day serves any purpose. I'd say a week, and if you push it, I'd say 2 weeks before Election Day at most. When you walk into that booth, it should be pretty much everybody voting the same day. I agree with President Trump on this. We should have Election Day, not Election Month. I could even say a Friday to Saturday type of thing too. 8 o'clock's Friday to 7 o'clock Friday night, and then 9 to 3 on a Saturday or something is fine. But it's got to be a much shorter window. So the early voting in H.R. 1 would also require same-day voter registration. Explain the wisdom of that one. 508-871-7000. So the same day of voting, you can go and just register and the vote's going to be counted. Do you understand how that is ripe for voter fraud? In this area, New England, we deal with this right every election. There's talk about, New Hampshire. We get the reports of buses of collegiate kids going into New Hampshire, voting same day, right, saying that they're going to move. And then when we look back, it gets poo-pooed. No. Initially, there's a report that 60%, there's no record of them getting a license or changing their address to New Hampshire. I'm sorry, same-day voter registration? No. No reason for it. If you can't get your act together by Election Day, you got to sit this one out. It's like the nanny. I mean, we're treating adults like small children whose hands have to be held. It's not like it's a mystery when Election Day is. It's not like we're going to change it every election cycle. It's spelled out in the Constitution, right? Which Tuesday it's just, it's there. You have plenty of time. You have years even on presidential elections to make sure that you're registered. So same-day voter registration's unnecessary. Online voter registration. I don't have a problem with that. Online voter registration, not voting. We should be able to go online to our city, town, or clerk's office and make sure either sign up to vote or make sure that, we're still active and the right address and everything's correct on us. I don't think voting should ever be allowed by the internet. And I don't think that any voting machine should ever be internet capable. Should never. There's no reason for a counting machine at a voting location to be hooked to the internet. First of all, it doesn't need that much brain power. It doesn't need that much computer in it. And it certainly doesn't need to be connected. It's a counting machine. It should be physically there, counts the votes there, with police officer there, lock and key, voting's over, you're secure the box, secure the information, take it in a chain of custody to the clerk's office. In this, we found a bunch of ballots in Mabel's trunk we forgot about, appearing late in the evening, much less in the middle of the night. All right, folks, we're going to take a break here, real quick break. We're going to check in. I think Teddy has a Find a Forever Home for Teddy's friends. We're going to listen to a couple of things. We'll continue on the other side of the Joe Mangiacotti Show. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation. Come on, join us this morning. I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
This is Sean Burke, president of the Licensed Private Detectives Association of Massachusetts, asking you to visit us at lpdam.org when you think you need a private investigator. Don't let your emotions negatively affect your future. Get your answers through a Massachusetts licensed private investigator. Get the facts without risking your credibility by unknowingly committing a criminal offense. You need a license to perform investigations in Massachusetts. What are some types of work that requires a license? Any type of surveillance. Interviewing someone for a third party, background and asset checks are just a few examples. For more on this, visit us at lpdm.org and tune into AM 830 WCRN Sunday mornings at 7:30 for case files from the LPDM or anytime at lpdmcasefiles.com.
We know why you're awake. Your child is about to get their driver's license. Levante's Auto School offers 1-week driving programs to help make sure your child stays safe and focused behind the wheel.
877 Drive Who's Ed?
That's the number for Levante's Auto School.
Learn to drive safely and efficiently. Visit one of our 5 locations throughout Massachusetts. Click Levante'sAutoSchool.com.
Levante's Auto School shows you how to learn the rules and keep your cool. 4-8-10-10-9-8.
Who's Ed? That's the number for Levante's Auto School.
Bam! Bam! On that 15.
Out with Joe. You're listening to Out with Joe. Out with Joe.
Slap some bacon on a biscuit and let's go.
Oh, this is the worst looking hat I ever saw. Well, you buy a hat like this, I'll bet you get a free bowl of soup, huh?
Welcome to this edition of Out with Joe, brought to you by Nothing Bundt Cakes in White City Plaza, Shrewsbury. I'm Joe Mangiacotti. This week we thought we'd take a look at how much to tip your delivery driver during coronavirus. Extreme situations call for extreme tipping. It's the right thing to do. Tipping is an unavoidable part of U.S. culture at any time. But as we rely more on food, grocery, and restaurant delivery during the coronavirus outbreak, the amount you should be tipping is climbing. Delivery drivers put themselves at greater risk of exposure to the COVID-19 disease that so far resulted in over 362,000 confirmed cases in the U.S. alone, so that you don't have to go outdoors. They're also often collecting minimum wage without hazard pay. The suggested amount is to tip at least 20% on all takeout and delivery orders, or more to show appreciation at a time when the unemployment rate has spiked to reach an all-time high in the U.S. So how much to tip at restaurants and bars in general? Well, let's look at that first. The good news is that you're not expected to tip the same amount at a 5-star restaurant as you would when ordering at the counter. But tips are acceptable, appreciated, and even expected for a person who serves you and cleans up when you're done. The same goes for delivery and carry-out. So in general, coffee shop baristas, $1 or so per drink, more for complicated orders like half-calf, no-fat soy latte with light foam and extra shot, whatever that means, or less for simple orders, hot water in a tea bag. Bartenders, $1 to $2 per drink, more for mixed drinks, less for drafts, or 20% if you're running a tab. Dine-in restaurant service, about 20%, or more for outstanding service. Buffet servers, 10 to 15%, depending on how many plates, forks, and refills you go through. Fast casual counter service, up to $1 for taking your order. $2 to $5 if they bus your table or deliver your food. Restaurant carry-out service, 10% more for large, complicated orders, such as baby shower or office party. Food delivery drivers, 10% or up to 20% or more during hazardous road conditions or special circumstances, such as holidays or big game night. But the last two, restaurant carry-out service and food delivery drivers, it is during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they are not getting hazardous pay. And don't forget that the minimum wage for these type of employees are far less than the standard minimum wage in any given state. Other things to keep in mind when tipping: cash is preferable to credit, but giving a credit card tip is better than going short on cash. It's rude to leave intentionally small tip, like a handful of change after a $50 meal. If you have exceptionally poor service, talk to the manager. Leaving no tip might be appropriate in extreme cases. The likelihood that a server will spit into your food is relatively low, so we don't recommend tipping solely to avoid that type of behavior. Rather, tip to acknowledge the work or service that has been done. For more on dining, entertainment, and news, click OutWithJoe.com and follow us on social media at OutWithJoe. Out with Joe has been brought to you by Nothing Bundt Cakes in White City Plaza in Shrewsbury, on Facebook at Nothing Bundt Cakes Shrewsbury. Have you heard of the hottest new bakery around? I know you heard about it right here. My friend Al has opened Nothing Bundt Cake in the White City Plaza in Shrewsbury. Nothing Bundt Cake is a bakery chain and is locally owned and operated by my friend Al. They have bundt cakes ranging from bite-sized to tiered, plus platters, candles, and cards. For any occasion, function, or just to have around the house or office, stop by and check them out. Everything is baked from scratch and on site. Nothing beats a sweet surprise. And until you try one of Al's bundt cakes, you haven't tried a real bundt cake. Stop by and ask for Al. Tell him Joe told you to stop by. 98 Boston Turnpike, White City Plaza, near Planet Fitness, Shrewsbury, and on Facebook as well, Nothing Bundt Cake Shrewsbury.
To join the conversation, call 508-871-7000. That's 508-871-7000. Now, here's your host, Joe Mangiacotti.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second half of the first hour of the Joe Mangiacotti Show here in AM 830, WCRN and our affiliates, as well as live streaming on the TuneIn app. And don't forget, you can tell Alexa to play WCRN, and we're live streaming on our Facebook page at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. You've got the audio there. There's a camera in the studio, but the point is the audio is streaming, so it's very easy to listen to us on your devices and take us anywhere. 617-297-8388 is the text line, 617-297-8388. Or you can email Text Joe on the radio at gmail.com. It appears on the same screen, and a lot of you like to communicate that way, and thank you very much for that. But you can always pick the phone up, 508-871-7000, 508-871-7000. All right, so I just want to finish my my thoughts here on Pence coming out and talking about these irregularities. Wow, Kim, I don't know. You have that one word that just always messes you up, man, right? So the irregularities concerning the 2020 election and this H.R. 1 bill that they're really pushing. I mean, there's just they even want to control the speech, but continuing on, so the online voter registration, absolutely, that's not a problem. Everybody, that's just the world that we live in today. However, the automatic voter registration for any individual listed in state and federal government databases. Think about this for a moment. First of all, I think it's important that everybody who wants to vote has to vote. If you start registering people who don't even know that they're getting registered. In other words, you are registering them. They're now eligible to vote. They don't even know it. It is our civic duty and responsibility to vote, but it's your perfect right not to. Right? In the society we live in, you have just as much right not to vote as you do to vote. No one's going to force you to vote. I don't know if it's a great idea to register people who don't even know that they're being registered, because you've just put a round in the chamber. You can now pull the trigger on that vote. That person can vote, and they don't even know they're registered. So if they don't know they're registered, they're not going to go vote, are they? If they didn't have enough interest and concern with registering themselves, what makes you think they're going to show up on election day? But furthermore on this, automatic voter registration for any individual listed in any state or federal government database, such as DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles, welfare offices. So now you look at the push to do what? Issue licenses to illegal aliens under the guise that it's a safety issue. That if we give an official state document to someone who's illegally here, they broke the law to be here, they're not officially here, but we give them a tacit approval by giving them a driver's license, they're now listed in a government state database, Department of Motor Vehicles, which means, according to HL1, would they not then automatically be registered to vote, which they have no business. Talk about foreign election interference. I thought that was a big concern with the left and Russian hoax inclusion and interfering in elections. Allowing non-citizens to vote in our elections, that is foreign election interference. Isn't it? I mean, it's simple. It's not a complicated thought process here, a linear thought to get there. In welfare offices. And because we are a decent society and humane society and we have safety nets and we don't like to see people suffer, if you are here illegally, you can definitely get emergency SNAP benefits by walking into any welfare office. I've witnessed it and I didn't know. Are you telling me I did not see that. Thank you. 508-871-7000. Ken, I didn't catch it on the screen. Sorry about that. Good morning, Ken.
Morning, Joe. How are you?
I'm fine. I don't know if you can tell in my voice. Have you ever had Bell palsy come on?
No, I know you described.
Yeah. So
yesterday that it was affecting your face.
Yeah, the right side of the face is all droopy, and I know it's slurring the speech a little bit and all that, but some steroids and antivirals, and they say it will clear up. So we'll see.
In fact, it kind of leads to the topic. I wanted to give a rosier picture. Yesterday I was quite dour.
Okay.
Because there are so many threats to freedom.
Yes.
There is tyranny running rampant. But I want to cross over because isn't Bell palsy one of the issues related to the vaccine?
Yeah, you're right. They're not quite sure about it. And actually, it's funny you say that. Ted from here was one of 3 people that immediately asked me, did you get the vaccine? Have you been vaccinated? And I haven't, folks. I haven't gotten the vaccination or haven't had any shots lately. They think it's viral, but they also say stress can trigger it. I remember my dad had it as a kid. I remember him getting it and he had it for, I don't remember how long it was, but it eventually just cleared up and went away. But there apparently is a thought that there's a connection between getting a vaccine and Bell's palsy rearing its ugly head.
Yeah, so anyway, on the vaccine topic, that's the bright light, or one of the few that we have today to cheer on. Massachusetts now over 20% have been gotten at least one shot, and nearly 10% have been fully vaccinated. And this is going to allow us to shed this tyranny. And if the use of ivermectin continues to grow at the pace that it's going. And I don't know if you have followed much of that.
We've talked about the ivermectin a little bit before, I believe, right? That has come up.
Well, I certainly
think you have brought it up
as soon as last summer, because the evidence even then was quite overwhelming, and now there are forces that are likely, the way it looks, and literally I follow he's a nurse, or at least that's his title, but he's a medical professional that broadcasts, he has a YouTube channel. John Campbell, and I find him quite good. In some cases, I think he's a bit too extreme in his fear of COVID. But he literally, inside of one day, went from interviewing somebody that was skeptical of ivermectin, a pharmacist from Vancouver, to another doctor that he had a full 1-hour program that was quite encouraging and suggests that we're nearing the point where the WHO will promote it. And once that happens, then all of the barriers, the fear mongers, the walls come tumbling down, the water, the dam breaks.
Yeah.
And this is going to be standard of practice for doctors in treating COVID. And its efficacious properties are way better than anything else.
Well, I got to tell you, the phenomenon that was anything that Trump and by extension Republicans or conservatives said about the simple preventative hydrochloroquine and all of that was automatic for political reasons, Ken, were bad, and the big tech guys even wiped it off the internet.
They still are.
And they still are. I mean, those 6
Even
doctors that they got rid of and doctors that lost it, these are board certified doctors that have every right as the doctors who are on the left political correct side of things to talk, but it's for political reasons. Orange man bad, anything he says or promotes has got to be horrible and has to be ripped from the internet, or you have to be called names and deplatformed or shadow banned or whatever for this, and all because of political reasons, all sacrificing the science and the health of all of our citizens for political reasons. I mean, and then you have Nancy Pelosi, who admits that she delayed COVID relief packages because she couldn't let Trump appear to have a win or look good in any way. And we accept this. We know it. We talk about it, at least in our forums. You're not going to hear this discussion on CNN or MSNBC or anything like that, but it's out there, and we know this, and it's been allowed. And I just hope that this idiocy of we got to still wear masks with everybody vaccinated. Why at this point? You know, the was it 13 states I think we're up to, right, have lifted the mask banning, and you've got these adamant mask people saying, you know, you're not going to take my mask away. You know, nobody's trying to take your mask away, dude. All we're saying is you're an adult. You make the decision. You don't have, no one's forcing you to take the mask off. If you feel comfortable with it and you want it for your protection, you can wear it for the rest of your life. If you want to go into a store and they're not mandating it, and I think you're going to find a lot of stores are going to continue that, Ken, but some aren't. Don't go in the store. You're an adult. Make those decisions for yourself. If you're 80 years old and you have pre-existing conditions, you should think about staying home more often than not. But this power that got transferred to these governors, I mean, look at it in Cuomo, right? They're ripping those powers back from him because they realize he went power hungry. But apparently Cuomo's always been this power hungry jerk. And we can talk about Cuomo later.
I mean, like literally on that topic, if anyone from the left, you've given the example of your sister, are trying to persuade you in some way, there's 3 words: nursing homes Cuomo.
Yeah.
Your side was elevating him as almost godlike a year ago, hiding the story. That's despicable. How dare you tell me about how good your side is?
What was the Ellen DeGeneres, Jimmy Fallon? What was the about sexuality in Cuomo? What was the term they were saying? Ellen DeGeneres said she was a Cuomo-ologist. I forget the term. They were using a term meaning that he was so sexy and love him because he was so wonderful in those briefings. The guy should give that Emmy back and get off the stage. And the thing about this is, right, all of the people that lost their lives because of his March 25th directive and hiding the data, altering reports, they brush that all by and gloss over that. But the sexual accusations are getting at him. I mean, maybe it's just when you've got, 16 members of the state assembly calling for his recall or resignation, and even the New York Times. I mean, he's lost his party. He's gone too far. Did you catch the? But
effectively, he hasn't stepped aside.
No. In his he hasn't apologized for the deaths, by the way. And his apology for the sexual stuff was not an apology. It was, that's the way I am. I'm a touchy-feely guy. My father was too. That's not an apology. That's the way I work a room. What? Are you kidding me? He's got to get out of there. I mean, hand them an Emmy back, which was a joke to begin with, and let it. Did you see the interview with the third one, the latest one? How detailed she was. I mean, where's was it Hildebrand and Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, where Hillary Clinton? Why are they all quiet on this? I'll tell you one of the reasons. Part of the reasons is there isn't no reporters asking them any questions. Why aren't they asking these prominent, powerful women their thoughts on this?
They have no principles. All they care about is the party and power. It's that simple.
You know, I mean, how many women have got to come forward who have been victims of Andrew Cuomo before he does the right thing and steps down or is removed from that office. Could you imagine if this is the Florida governor, Ken? What would be happening?
Well, don't give him an idea.
Yeah, I know, right? Sorry.
Let's be serious.
Yeah.
That's the era that we live in.
Of course, he would have to do something for it to. Well, not necessarily, right? That's really the fact that whether it's look at Brett Kavanaugh. I mean, what they did to Brett Kavanaugh with no. I mean, there was no evidence. And then women after the fact, right? There wasn't a lot of coverage of the women who admitted that they made it up.
It was the totally fabricated story that the Ford concocted with their psychologist.
Bad stuff, man.
That was the whole story. There was nothing to it whatsoever, and we saw what we saw. It was absurd.
You got it.
But
interesting.
Nonetheless, there's bright light.
Yeah.
Just to fill you in as far as the ivermectin, literally it is useful at any stage. In fact, it's most important. Should have been done a year ago because the information is coming out. At least certainly by last summer, they should have been prescribing it to every healthcare facility, particularly nursing homes and assisted living, for the staff. Because literally in South America that was done in one particular study, like a third of all the staff that weren't given it got COVID, and of those who were, an equal number of which there were hundreds, there was like 2%.
Yeah.
So it was like 2 or 3% versus like 40.
Except Donald Trump wasn't president in Africa. You see?
Well, no, this is what I'm describing as international.
I'm saying that, but what I'm saying is anything that would have helped the Trump administration was shut down.
It wasn't just Trump. This is international. This is a lot of corruption within the drug companies. Like literally, the company Merck, who patented the drug 40 years ago, denounced it 3 weeks ago, said it was too dangerous. They had been using it for 40 years for parasites, and now they say it's too dangerous when there's been over 3 billion pills taken. It's absurd. It's laughable that anybody with an ounce of intelligence would make such a claim. But why did Merck do that? Simple. They need to shake down the government by creating a new treatment. So they're spending hundreds of millions for a new treatment for COVID to replace the one that really works that they actually came up with 40 years ago. But there's not as much money in that. It's that corrupt.
Always follow the money.
And yet, all you have to do is have the line, well, Merck has denounced it, and the doctor has something to stand on and say, oh, no, I can't prescribe that. The creator denounced it. Well, the creator's corrupt.
Isn't it interesting that we often cite or refer to a corrupt entity or an entity that's in the bag with the original offender, and that's supposed to be, I mean, when you say, well, the FBI, well, the FBI has lost a lot of credibility, right? So, when you say, well, look what they did for Hillary Clinton in the investigation and changing the verbiage in the report. When you look at this and you say, you can't just count on that. You have to dig everything deeper and deeper. It's sad that we're at a point in society where organizations at one time, like the FBI, we really thought, when I was growing up, we thought they were beyond reproach. We thought that they had all the integrity in the world, and if the FBI, the G-men got into it, the feds looked into it, it was thorough. But we've come to find out, not all. Trust me. Majority of FBI agents, folks, are patriots, and they're there for the right reason. But unfortunately, there are a few political hacks and operatives in key high positions in the FBI that are willing to do corrupt things for their party. And we saw that with Cuomo, who admitted to manipulating the neophyte in the White House, the new administration that didn't know the rules. That's a disgusting thing for the director of the FBI to do.
Well, look what today's director, Ray, did this past week in testimony about the officer who died, and they're trying to figure out, well, what did he die of? and he won't tell. Oh,
the
we're
one
still in
accused,
touch.
the one
2
that
months
said the
later.
fire hydrant officer.
I'm talking of the one that was in the count of like 4 people who died in the January 6th event.
Right.
And in all likelihood, it was, the stress that created maybe a heart attack. I'm just guessing, but they won't tell
Psychic. They're saying that the first reports were that he was hit in the head with a fire extinguisher.
Right. You got it.
That's totally false, folks. Absolutely not. He left work that day perfectly fine. A family member said that they think he might have had a stroke that night. They won't release the details of his death, much less autopsy or anything. But the reports came out, and they were totally made up. That he was hit in the head with the fire hydrant, that he was attacked, and no, none of that happened. And he died. And for all we know, he could have passed away if there was no incident on January 6th. Nothing happened. It could have still happened. It could have just been his time in the world, in the universe. And there's nothing to connect his death with the incidences of January 6th. None. But that didn't stop these fictitious reports. I mean, who came up with the fire hydrant in the head thing?
Probably some reporter who makes up, Russian collusion.
I mean, the only person the only weapon, there were no weapons. That's the other thing, by the way. The insurrection of January 6th, not one firearm was found on anybody in there at all. And the only death was the peaceful protester who was shot by security in Capitol Hill.
Yeah, and she hardly was peaceful. What's the play acting that they do? That seemed like what she was carrying out, and she was crazed with that, and so she came barging through, and the officer warned, and she didn't stop, and the officer shot her from the information we have. And
well, wait a minute. She was shot through the window. She wasn't the first one going through the window. There was people between her and the window. The shot went through by somebody.
But she was part of the.
She wasn't armed.
Yeah, right. Okay, but if you can imagine that you're being charged by a group of people, and you're an officer and you want them to stop, and they don't. They're just crazed. I mean, it's in many ways similar to the stories of all the wild blaming the police for a white policeman being shooting a black one. It's
well, the thing is, Ken, I mean, we're coming against the clock here, but the thing on that is I wish that the details were out a lot better. We're not. That's the other thing. Everything concerning that day is not being transparent, right? The stand-down orders, the activation orders, the timelines messed up. The offer for National Guard to be there was refused. I mean, there's just too much. There's not enough transparency. Too many questions to be asked about that. We really don't know what actually was going on in there that day and leading up to it. But that could have been a prevented thing. Now we have 14-foot fences around Capitol, and our United States Capitol is occupied at this day. This is just beyond ridiculous. But we're against the clock. 7 o'clock. We're going to take a break here. We'll come back, and we're going to be joined by a special guest, and we'll talk about the Dr. Seuss books, cancel culture in the United States, and some of the effects of that. I'm Joe Mangiacotti.
WACE Chicopee and WCRN Worcester.
7 o'clock. Hey folks, Joe Mangiacotti from the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN. Reminding you, talk radio is the immune system to the partisan, bias, political rhetoric attacking us on a daily basis. Get inoculated. The Joe Mangiacotti Show is your vaccine. Join me weekend mornings, 6 to 8.
I want to tell you what Cantiani Insurance has been able to do for me and Teddy. We stopped in to see Paul Sr. and the great staff at 318 Plantation Street. They've been handling my car and business insurance for years. Teddy was making his way around the office, and they let me know they now offer pet insurance. For a fraction of what one visit to the vet was for Teddy, they could cover him for a whole year. I know you treat your furry family members like any other family member, and as well as I do Teddy. The professional staff at Cantiani's has been providing courteous service for over 40 years, with integrity and personalized service, making sure that your insurance actually protects you and your family. With 2 locations, the 318 Plantation Street in Worcester and East East Douglas Insurance Agency, located at 306 Main Street in Douglas. For home, auto, business insurance, and now pet insurance, click CantianiAgency.com or call 508-791-2088. 508-791-2088.
Golden Group Roofing is a community brand. From our Master Elite roofers and industry partners to our clients, every single person represents the Golden Group standard. We strive every day to make your home's needs a priority because Golden Group invests in you and your communities. With unbeatable craftsmanship, customer satisfaction, reasonable pricing, Golden Group Roofing stands above the rest. Having been awarded GAF Master Elite Contractor, Certainteed Select Shingle Master, and GAF Energy Certified Solar, Golden Group Roofing is 100% worthy of your investment. Experience the Golden Group difference, where hands protect what matters most. Visit us at goldengrouproofing.com or call us at 508-873-1884. 508-873-1884.
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
All right, folks, welcome back to the second hour of the Joe Mangiacotti Show on AM 830 WCRN and affiliates. Don't forget we're live streaming on the TuneIn app. You can tell Alexa to play WCRN. She'll do that, no questions asked. We're also live streaming on my Facebook page at Joe Mangi Show, M-A-N-G-I, Joe Mangi Show. That's also the handle for all of our social media platforms. 508-871-7000 to join the conversation, 508-871-7000. Our text line is also up and running and available at 617-297-8388, 617-297-8388. If you can't text, but you have a device, you can email Text Joe on the Radio at gmail.com. It appears on the same screen. All right, as promised, folks, at this time I'm going to invite into the conversation Allie Boyd, who's author of Uncensored America, Thought-Provoking Poetry on Faith, Family, and Freedom. Allie, good morning, and thank you for joining us so early on the weekend morning.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I thank you. This is great. I got to tell you, I saw your information here about the Dr. Seuss books, that they're deemed to be offensive, and I, you always follow the money, right? In this Conscious Kid organization, and maybe we should let listeners understand that the Conscious Kid is an organization that wants to wipe out racism, and they tell us that it begins as early as 3 years old in our kids. And they're behind the push for Joe Biden to remove these books from the National Day of Reading program. And that's what kicked this all off, Allie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we have these 7 books. I mean, they are, what is it? Obi-Wan Zebra, If I Ran the Zoo, The Cat's Quizzer, McElliot's Pool, Scrambled Egg Supper. Those are the books we're talking about.
Yeah, and there's one additional one, To Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, which
is
actually his first book.
Right. I think I saw it on Mulberry. That was published in 1937. And let's not forget that Dr. Seuss Theodore Seuss, right? That was his name. He was a very liberal guy, and he was anti-fascist. He was very much hated the Nazis. He was for, racial tolerance. He was a good liberal. And these books that the conscious kid decided should not be read and should be banned because of the pictures that they depict. But let's not forget, and this is, right, Allie, we always got to follow the money. And the thing about this is that taking down Dr. Seuss books, that in their place they're going to sell thousands of anti-racist books to schools across the country. And the conscious kids, financially, they're affiliated with Black Lives Matter. And the kids, the books here, they have books about Kamala Harris, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and these books are written by Obama, Biden, and Clinton donors. So it's very shocking news if you follow the money.
Yeah, I would totally agree.
What's your take? Let me just ask you, where are you coming from? What angle in all this?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot going on in this story, and I am a poet, and I was absolutely inspired by Dr. Seuss from my very youngest childhood years. I have a 4-year-old daughter. We love reading Dr. Seuss, and it's really kind of scary in a way, because if you think about it, the fact that everything you said about Dr. Seuss was accurate, and he was really held up as someone with liberal progressive values for many, many years. And here we are 80 years after some of these books have been published, and they're now telling us that they're simply not acceptable, which means that if Dr. Seuss can have this happen to him, no one is really safe from this type of censorship or, racism accusations. And I feel like it's just a very slippery slope, because I think that from one angle, they didn't go after the top titles in his collection. So I feel like kind of softening people up for this type of behavior. You remove some of the lesser known titles. Well, guess what? By the time we get to the most well-known titles, there may not be anything that anyone can really do. And I think that it just goes to show that the attack on children in school and the educational system, it is in full force. And exactly like you mentioned with the conscious kid, I mean, we've seen bills recently passed, like the culturally responsive teaching and leading standards in Illinois, which is requiring teachers to take their students to protest. It is forcing on them directly from the bill, talking about forcing progressive ideas on the students. And as somebody who does have a young daughter who's going to be going to, well, she's going to be homeschooled at this point. Honestly, if the last year has shown me anything, it's that I can't entrust her education to the state, essentially.
Well, I got to tell you, Allie, it was interesting that when we started the remote teaching doing it on the Zooms and the classes, that all of a sudden the teachers realized, oh my goodness, parents are in the room. So we had school systems actually come out and say, new rule, parents cannot watch the teaching session. You can't be in the room with the kids. Now, the moment a teacher tells me that I can't do that, I'm sitting next to my child.
Absolutely.
Are you kidding me? What do you mean? As far as I'm concerned, a parent should be able to audit their child's class at any time, unannounced. I think that a parent should be able to walk into their child's classroom and sit in the back of the room anytime, any day, for as long as they want, and nobody should be able to say boo about that. But we digress on that for a little bit. But going back to what you're saying about the lesser titles, I mean, it's a classic instance of when they came for, nobody said anything. Yeah. And when they came for, nobody said, and then now they can decide and come for anybody, and nobody is safe and nobody is protected. But I thought that we should take a moment and talk about what is the issue that they're having, because when you think about it, to think I saw it on Mulberry Street, the first one, his first book published in 1937, canceled, and this is the problem that the conscious kid has with it, is that the Chinese man is depicted eating with chopsticks. It was described as deeply hurtful, also because he had epical eyes. Now, it's 1937. eating. They still eat chopsticks.
Yeah.
I'm married to a Taiwanese nationalist. We eat with chopsticks today.
Yep.
And the eyes are depicted in, I mean, this is 1937, but guess what? The New York Times, right? The Guardian, these are very liberal publications. They have recently, in the last months, had cartoon characters depicted with the same eyes in Dr. Seuss 80 years ago.
Yep.
So how is that horrible then, but was acceptable for New York Times and the Guardian to have those cartoons today?
Yeah, I think it's just another example of the hypocrisy that's been taking place. And the truth is that, these are cartoons. We've been kind of told over and over again in the last year or so that we need to acknowledge people's cultural backgrounds and their races, and that being colorblind isn't good enough anymore. You've got to overtly identify people by their race.
Right.
Well, the truth is, we all have cultural heritage, and those stereotypes, so to speak, they typically come from something that's accurate. So for me, I have a background of Irish and Scottish. I have red hair, green eyes, pale skin, freckles, the whole 9 yards.
Right.
If someone were to depict me
And
as
I love,
or an Irish person,
and Allie, I love the ink. I saw you. I checked it online. Right? You got some beautiful ink, lady.
well, thank you so much.
But
yeah, I don't know. It's like people are being depicted in some cases exactly as maybe they would have been in 1937. Sometimes exactly as it is today.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's the question is who is actually offended by this, because the company, Dr. Seuss Enterprises, is the one that essentially canceled these books. And I find this one of the most fascinating points of this entire story.
Right.
Is that they internally canceled them because they said they had a review from a panel of experts and academics. Of course, we never know who these people are. We never get a list of names.
No.
We never get to dig into their backgrounds and see what skeletons they may have in their closet. Yet they get to decide that Dr. Seuss, who had a long legacy of anti-racism, is now going to have this tarnish on his name.
Right.
People who loved Dr. Seuss are now looking at him differently. And that is just a complete disregard of his legacy. And the fact that this company that is tasked with protecting his legacy, they're the ones that did it.
Rolled over.
I find it.
Yeah.
Yes, I feel like it's just disgusting. And the fact that they announced it on his birthday, on Read Across America Day, when they had known that they were going to do this for months and months, I think it was a big PR push, if you ask me, because sales of all of those books have increased.
Absolutely.
Because,
there you go. Yeah.
People
Go
think
to
that they're
eBay.
being canceled by this outside source, yet it's actually the internal company, and then they're profiting off of it. And there's no one
Good
to
point.
stand up for Dr. Seuss.
Yeah.
Because him and his late wife, they're both passed now. There's no one directly tied to him that can defend him any longer. And to me, that's just the saddest part of all of this, is that there is a profit component involved, yet it is destroying one more thing in the education system. And it's going to be the process of desensitizing everyone to this type of behavior, so that the next time it happens, it's a little less shocking. And the next time it's a little less shocking until no one speaks up.
And you make a great point that stereotypes are there for a reason. And how is this racist when it's accurate depictions? When we look at Oh Beyond Zebra, now that was published in 1955, and they're canceling that because in there there's a cartoon, the picture, the man is riding a camel in the Middle East, where they still ride camels today, and he had a turban on, which they still wear turbans today. Again, who's offended by this? It's just an accurate depiction, and he has the pearl-toed slippers. But you know what? They were very fashionable in the Middle East in those days. In 1950s, they actually wore those. So again, who's offended by this?
And, it's also interesting because the books that have been canceled, those depictions, I think, the people who've actually seen them can agree that we don't really find them offensive, and we don't know anyone of those races who does, but he was an illustrator before he started publishing books.
Right.
And in that time period, he wrote for a satirical magazine called The Judge, and these illustrations are now being brought into the mix. Well, these are not even a part of the entire conversation. They're not being canceled because they're not being printed today. So there are photos that he drew that were very much about what was going on in the world at the time. I mean,
Sure.
Let's be honest, that time period, we had the Great Depression, Pearl Harbor, World War II, lots of things that were going on that were very seriously impacting American culture and the world. The illustrations
absolutely.
that he drew they're really showing the absurdity of some of these things, yet people are taking them literally.
Yeah.
They don't understand that satire and sarcasm.
No, the left never has a sense of
justice.
humor. No,
Yeah,
they never have a
correct.
sense of humor. And just before I get texts or calls on this, on the old Beyond Zebra, there is a white man. He has a whip and the elephant pulling the cart, but you're pretty sure he's whipping at the elephant as they would have done to getty up and go, and not the person of color. So, before people get on that, make that clear. So, I mean, there's sometimes, a hammer, every problem to a hammer, is a nail, right? And sometimes people are looking for stuff that just isn't there. 508-871-7000. Our guest is Allie Boyd. She is the author of, and by the way, maybe you can shed light on this, because your book, Uncensored America, Thought-Provoking Poetry on Faith, Family, and Freedom, when I hit the link, could go check it out and post it, I got a 404 error, Allie.
Oh, try removing the www
okay.
/ we ended up updating it, and it just hasn't redirected yet.
All right, so we'll do that, folks. I'll fix that on my social media, because I was like, we're going to ask Allie what happened here. Did they ban Allie? So, can we go to the phones, Allie? You want to take a phone call?
Absolutely.
All right, 508-871-7000 and join the conversation. Joanne, thank you for holding. You're on with Allie and myself.
Oh, thank you, Joe. Good morning, Allie. I couldn't agree with you and Joe more. This is really a terrible thing, going after Dr. Seuss. And I wonder if you think it's because of his background. Dr. Seuss was quite a patriot. He made really funny, and you can still see them on YouTube because I looked them up yesterday, private snafu films to show to the young GIs, what to do and what not to do. And they're really cute. Have you heard of those, the private snafu for the military?
Yep.
Yeah. And then the other film he made, which with Disney in 1953, The 5,000 Fingers of Dr. T, that was really an allegory against Nazism and authoritarian and totalitarian governments.
Right.
And I bet that's why they're going after him, too, because, of course, what do we have now with the Democrats? Authoritarian, totalitarian governments.
Look, Dr. Seuss, Theodore Seuss, he was very, anti-Nazi. He was for racial tolerance. He was a good patriot. I mean, he was all these great things, and now they're attacking these pictures. And we're going to get in a little more into this, Joanne. So listen, because the conscious kid is behind a lot of this, and you got to follow the money sometimes here. Anything else you want to talk to Allie about, Joanne?
Well, and then the banning on eBay. I mean, I had one of the books, and I put it up, and so you can't even. What was that all about? The banning the people that so people want to buy the book and for a lot of money. Why can't you do that? I mean, it's banning on top of banning, don't you think? What was that about?
Good point, Allie, about the eBay situation.
Yeah, well, first of all, I totally agree with you about the patriot thing, because the truth is that classic liberal ideas, they're not the same as what's being pushed today. And I think we need to make that clear. that someone who has classical liberal values most likely doesn't agree with a lot of the things that are being pushed today. And I know a lot of those people personally. So I think it's very similar to what they've done with Walt Disney and his legacy. He was a great patriot. The people running his company now are very much in bed with China. And it's very sad to see because he wouldn't have wanted that.
Right.
In terms of the eBay thing, I think it's just one more red flag that we are in this 1984 state. We are living in a time where they're
Orwellian
actively
times.
they're looking to erase history, erase things they deem not acceptable any longer. And they have the power to do it because we are being run by these monopolies. And those are themes that I cover a lot in my book. And it's hard to ignore it right now because you've got so much power consolidated. His publisher was part of this decision, Penguin Random House. They just merged with Simon & Schuster not too many months ago. You've got this massive publishing conglomerate that is deciding what's published and what's not. Amazon and eBay get to decide what's distributed and what's not. And there's not a lot that the rest of us can do about it right now.
Exactly, and that's a good point. It's they can't even compete with Amazon and eBay doing this, and they're removing these books and they're deciding. But I have a real problem with across the board, Allie, of getting rid of monuments and books and pictures and cartoons, and these are things that we need to have because they're great teachable moments. They're a great way to look at the past. If you whitewash the past, we're going to make some of the same mistakes, and we're seeing that happen now. Joanne, thank you very much. Great call. 508-871-7000. Let's go to Mark in Worcester. Mark, you're on with Allie and myself.
Good morning, Allie. Joe, don't hit the panic button. I had an uncle back in the 60s. He had that Bell's policy, and that it went away.
Yeah.
A couple of months. Just dissipated and went away, and he never had a problem with it again.
Yeah, I'm thinking it will happen. Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
That's usually the case.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, we're all, Allie, yourself, 75 million others of us are trying to make sense out of nonsense. What's going on with Dr. Seuss? That's just a canary in a coal mine. The real problem is that the power of the federal government has fallen into the hands of radical socialists and neo-Marxists who are conducting what Chairman Mao described in the Little Red Book as the cultural revolution. That's what we're undergoing right now. What we're seeing with Dr. Seuss books and a myriad of everything you can think of is part of the neo-Marxist cultural revolution. The power of the federal government has fallen into the hands of these radical socialists and neo-Marxists, and it's not going to stop until somehow we remove them from power. So you might as well get used to it because it's going to be one thing after another. They have an agenda, and they're carrying out their agenda. That's just my opinion. Have a good one.
Thank you, Mark. Always a great call. Allie, your thought in response to that, what Mark had to say, it's a pretty powerful statement.
It is, yes. I mean, there is a clear push to change the culture of this country from the way that we look at each other. I mean, Dr. Seuss's The Sneetches was deemed too race neutral by this group that did this study, that they want kids to actively protest and fight against racial discrimination instead of accepting one another as they are. That is, to me, one of the most powerful and clear indicators of what's happening. But then look at Abraham Lincoln High School in San Francisco. They're changing the name of that because he did not help the African-American community enough. If people like Dr. Seuss and Abraham Lincoln are no longer good enough, none of us will be good enough, and they will push these things on us every step of the way. And there are a lot of different groups that are behind things that are happening right now. There's a poem in my book called Crime Incorporated, and it's all about charity organizations that are really pulling a lot of the strings. And I think it's something that everyone needs to understand